family. Welcome to the Joyful House on this beautiful Easter. Happy Easter. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. I couldn't decide whether or not to continue with our storybooks on today and just let everyone have time with their family, but I thought, well, maybe if everyone's full with Easter dinner, maybe they'd like to come back and listen to the next two chapters. So the choice is yours when you listen to this. But I'm so glad that you are here in the Joyful House, whatever time that it may be for you, as we continue reading Anne of the Island. This is part of the Anne of Green Gables series, and we are in book 3. And today we are going to look at chapters 17 and 18. Chapter 17 is a letter from Davy, and chapter 18 is Miss Josephine remembers the Anne girl. All right, I hope you'll sit back and relax. And shall we get started with chapter 17, a letter from Davy. It's beginning to snow, girls, said Phil, coming in one November evening, and there are the loveliest little stars and crosses all over the garden walk. I never noticed before what exquisite things snowflakes really are. One has time to notice things like that in the simple life. Bless you all for permitting me to live it. It's really delightful to feel worried because butter has gone up 5 cents a pound. Has it? Demanded Stella, who kept the household accounts. It has. And here's your butter. I'm getting quite expert at marketing. It's better fun than flirting, concluded Phil gravely. Everything is going up scandalously, sighed Stella. Never mind. Thank goodness air and salvation are still free, said Aunt Jamesina. And so is laughter, added Anne. There's no tax on it yet, and that is well, because you're all going to laugh presently. I'm going to read you Davy's letter. His spelling has improved immensely this past year, though he is not strong on apostrophes, and he certainly possesses the gift of writing an interesting letter. Listen and laugh before we settle down to the evening study grind. Dear Anne, ran Davy's letter, I take my pen to tell you that we are pretty well and hope this will find you the same. It's snowing some today, and Marilla says the old woman in the sky is shaking her feather beds. Is the old woman in the sky God's wife, Anne? I want to know. Miss Lynn has been real sick, but she is better now. She fell down the cellar stairs last week. When she fell, she grabbed hold of the shelf with all the milk pails and stew pans on it, and it gave away and went down with her and made a splendid crash. Marilla thought it was an earthquake at first. One of the stew pans was all dinged up, and Miss Lynn strained her ribs. The doctor came and gave her medicine to rub on her ribs, but she didn't understand him and took it all inside instead. The doctor said it was a wonder it didn't kill her, but it didn't, and it cured her ribs, and Miss Lynn says doctors don't know much anyhow. But we couldn't fix up that stew pan. Marilla had to throw it out. Thanksgiving was last week. They're celebrating Thanksgiving. We're celebrating Easter. There was no school, and we had a great dinner. I ate mince pie and roast turkey and fruit cake and donuts and cheese and jam and chocolate cake. Marilla said I'd die, but I didn't. Dora had earache after it, only it wasn't in her ears, it was in her stomach. I didn't have earache anywhere. Our new teacher is a man. He does things for jokers. He does things for jokes. Last week, he made all us third-class boys write a composium on what kind of a wife we'd like to have and the girls on what kind of a husband. He laughed fit to kill when he read them. This was mine. I thought you'd like to see it. The kind of wife I'd like to have. She must have good manners and get my meals on time and do what I tell her and always be very polite to me. She must be 15 years old. She must be good to the poor and keep her house tidy and be good-tempered and go to church regularly. She must be very handsome and have curly hair. If I get a wife that is just what I will like. I'll be an awful good husband to her. I think a woman ought to be awful good to her husband. Some poor women haven't any husbands. The end. I was at Miss Isaac Wright's funeral at White Sands last week. The husband of the corpse felt real sorry. Miss Lynn said Mrs. Wright's grandfather stole a sheep, but Marilla says we mustn't speak ill of the dead. Why mustn't we, Anne? I want to know. It's pretty safe, ain't it? Miss Lynn was awful, and the other day, because I asked her if she was alive in Noah's time, I didn't mean to hurt her feelings. I just wanted to know, was she, Anne? Mr. Harrison wanted to get rid of his dog, so he hung him once, but he come to life and scooted for the barn while Mr. Harrison was digging the grave. Oh, my gosh. So he hung him again, and he stayed dead that time. No, I don't like that at all. Mr. Harrison has a new man working for him. He's awful awkward. Mr. Harrison says he's left-handed in both his feet. Mr. Barry's hired man is lazy. Mrs. Barry says that, but Mr. Barry says he ain't lazy exactly, only he thinks it's easier to pray for things than to work for them. Mrs. Harmon Andrews' prize pig that she talked so much of died in a fit. Miss Lynn says it was a judgment on her for pride. But I think it was hard on the pig. Milty Bolter has been sick. The doctor gave him medicine and it tasted horrid. I offered to take it for him for a quarter, but the Bolters are so mean. Milty says he'd rather take it himself and save his money. I asked Mrs. Bolter how a person would go about catching a man, and she got awful mad and said she didn't know. She'd never chase men. The AVIS is going to paint the hall again. They're tired of having it blue. The new minister was here to tea last night. He took 3 pieces of pie. If I did that, Miss Lynn would call me Piggy. And he ate fast and took big bites, and Marilla's always telling me not to do that. Why can ministers do what boys cannot? I want to know. I haven't any more news. Here are 6 kisses. XXXXXX. Dora sends one. Here's hers. X. Your loving friend, David Keith. P.S. Anne, who was the devil's father? I want to know. That Davy. All right, chapter 18. Miss Josephine remembers the Anne girl. When Christmas holidays came to the girls of Patty's Place, scattered to their respective homes, but Aunt Jamesina elected to stay where she was. I couldn't go to any of the places I've been invited and take those 3 cats, she said, and I'm not going to leave the poor creatures here alone for nearly 3 weeks. If we had any decent neighbors who would feed them, I might, but there's nothing except millionaires on this street, so I'll stay here and I'll keep Patty's Place warm for you. Anne went home with the usual joyous anticipation, which was not wholly fulfilled. She found Avonlea in the grip of such an early, cold, and stormy winter as even the oldest inhabitant could not recall. Green Gables was literally hemmed in by huge drifts almost every day of that ill-starred vacation. It stormed fiercely, and even on fine days, it drifted unceasingly. No sooner were the roads broken than they filled in again. It was almost impossible to stir out. The AVIS tried on 3 evenings to have a party in honor of the college students, and on each evening the storm was so wild that nobody could go. So they gave up the attempt in despair. Anne, despite her love and loyalty to Green Gables, could not help thinking longingly of Patty's Place. Its cozy open fire, Aunt Jamesina's mirthful eyes, the 3 cats, the merry chatter of the girls, the pleasantness of Friday evenings when college friends dropped in to talk of grave and gay. Anne was lonely. Diana, during the whole of the holidays, was imprisoned at home with a bad attack of bronchitis. She could not come to Green Gables, and it was rarely Anne could get to Orchard Slope, for the old way through the haunted wood was impassable with drifts. And the long way over the frozen lake of shining waters was almost as bad. Ruby Gillis was sleeping in the white heat graveyard. Jane Andrews was teaching at school on Western Prairies, and Gilbert, to be sure, was still faithful and waded up to the Green Gables every possible evening. But Gilbert's visits were not what they once were. Anne almost dreaded them. It was very disconcerting to look up in the midst of a sudden silence and find Gilbert's hazel eyes fixed upon her with a quite unmistakable expression in their grave depths, and it was still more disconcerting to find herself blushing hotly and uncomfortably under his gaze, just as if, well, it was very embarrassing. Anne wished herself back at Patty's Place, where there was always somebody about to take the edge off of a delicate situation. At Green Gables, Marilla went promptly to Miss Lynn's domain when Gilbert came, and insisted on taking the twins with her. The significance of this was unmistakable, and Anne was in a helpless fury over it. Davy, however, was perfectly happy. He reveled in getting out in the morning and shoveling out the paths to the well in the hen house. He gloried in the Christmas-tide delicacies which Marilla and Miss Lynn vied with each other in preparing for Anne, and he was reading an enthralling tale in a school library book of a wonderful hero who seemed blessed with a miraculous faculty for getting into scrapes from which he was usually delivered by an earthquake or a volcano explosion, which blew him high and dry out of his troubles, handed him in a fortune, and closed the story with proper eclat. "I'll tell you, it's a bully story, Anne," he said ecstatically. "I'd ever so much rather read it than the Bible." "Would you?" smiled Anne. Davy peered curiously at her. "You don't seem a bit shocked, Anne. Miss Lynn was awful shocked when I said it to her." "No, I'm not shocked, Davy. I think it's quite natural that a 9-year-old boy would sooner read an adventure story than the Bible. But when you are older, I hope and think you'll realize what a wonderful book the Bible is." "Oh, I think some parts of it are fine," conceded Davy. "That story about Joseph now, it's a bully. But if I'd been Joseph, I would not have forgiven the brothers. No, sirree, Anne. I'd have cut all their heads off. Miss Lynn was awful mad when I said that, and shut the Bible up and said she'd never read me any more of it if I talked like that. So I don't talk now when she reads it on Sunday afternoons. I just think things and say them to Milty Boulter next day in school. I told Milty the story about Elijah and the bears, and it scared him, so he's never made fun of Mr. Harrison's bald head since. Are there any bears on P.E. Island, Anne? I just want to know." "Not nowadays," said Anne absently as the wind blew a scud of snow against the window. "Oh dear, will it ever stop storming?" "God knows," said Davy airily, preparing to resume his reading. Anne was shocked this time. "Davy!" she exclaimed reproachfully. "Well, Miss Lynn says that," protested Davy. "One night last week, Marilla said, Will Ludwig Speed and Theodora Diggs ever get married? And Miss Lynn said, 'God knows,' just like that." "Well, it wasn't right for her to say it," said Anne promptly, deciding upon which horn of this dilemma to impale herself. "It isn't right for anybody to take that name in vain or speak it lightly. Davy, don't ever do it again." "Not if I say it slow and solemn like the minister?" queried Davy gravely. "No, not even then." "Well, I won't. Ludwig Speed and Theodora Dix live in Middle Grafton, and Miss Rachel says he's been courting her for 100 years. Won't they soon be too old to get married, Anne?" "I hope Gilbert won't court you that long. When are you going to be married, Anne? Miss Lynn says it's a sure thing." "Miss Lynn is a—" began Anne hotly, then stopped. "Awful old gossip," completed Davy calmly. "That's what everyone calls her. But is it a sure thing, Anne? I want to know." "You're a very silly little boy, Davy," said Anne, stalking hotly out of the room. The kitchen was deserted, and she sat down by the window in the fast-falling wintry twilight. The sun had set and the wind had died down. A pale, chilly moon looked out behind a bank of purple clouds in the west. The sky faded out, but the strip of yellow along the western horizon grew brighter and fiercer, as if all the stray gleams of light were concentrating in one spot, the distant hills, rimmed with priest-like firs, stood out in dark distinctness against it. Anne looked across the still, white fields, cold and lifeless in the harsh light of that grim sunset, and sighed. She was very lonely, and she was sad at heart, for she was wondering if she would be able to return to Redmond next year. It did not seem likely. The only scholarship possible in the sophomore year was a very small affair. She would not take Marilla's money, and there seemed little prospect of being able to earn enough in the summer vacation. I suppose I'll just have to drop out next year, she thought drearily, and teach a district school again until I earn enough to finish my course. And by that time, all my old classmates will have graduated, and Patty's place will be out of the question. But there, I'm not going to be a coward. I'm thankful I can earn my way through if necessary. "Here's Mr. Harrison waiting up the lane," announced Davy, running out. "I hope he's brought the mail. It's 3 days since we got it. I want to see what them pesky grits are doing. I'm a conservative, Anne, and I tell you, you have to keep your eye on them grits." Mr. Harrison had brought the mail, and merry letters from Stella and Priscilla and Phil soon dissipated Anne's blues. Aunt Jamesina, too, had written, saying that she was keeping the hearth fire alight, and that the cats were all well, and the house plants were doing fine. "The weather has been real cold," she wrote, "so I let the cats sleep in the house, Rusty and Joseph on the sofa in the living room, and the Sarah cat on the foot of my bed. It's real company to hear her purring when I wake up in the night and think of my poor daughter in the foreign field. If it was anywhere but in India, I wouldn't worry, but they say the snakes out there are terrible. It takes all the Sarah cat's purring to drive away that thought of them snakes. I have enough faith for everyone, but the snakes? I can't think why Providence ever made them. Sometimes I don't think he did. I'm inclined to believe the old Harry had a hand in making them." Anne had let the thin, typewritten communication till the last, thinking it unimportant. When she had read it, she sat very still, with tears in her eyes. "Well, what's the matter, Anne?" asked Marilla. "Miss Josephine Barry is dead." Said Anne in a low tone. "So she is gone at last," said Marilla. "Well, she has been sick for over a year, and the Barrys have been expecting to hear of her death any time. It is well she is at rest, for she has suffered dreadfully. She was always kind to you. She has been kind to the last, Marilla. This letter is from her lawyer. She has left me $1,000 in her will." "Gracious! Ain't that an awful lot of money?" exclaimed Davy. "She's the woman you and Diana lit on when you jumped into the spare room bed, ain't she? Diana told me that story. Is that why she left you so much?" "Hush, Davy," said Anne gently. She slipped away to the porch gable with a full heart, leaving Marilla and Miss Lynde to talk over the news to their heart's content. "Do you suppose Anne will ever get married now?" speculated Davy anxiously. "When Dorcas Sloane got married last summer, she said if she had enough money to live on, she'd never been bothered with a man. But even a widower with 8 children was better than having a sister-in-law, than living with a sister-in-law." "Davy Keith, do hold your tongue," said Miss Rachel severely. "The way you talk is scandalous for a small boy. That's what." Wow. I was not expecting that, my friends. And I am curious if you were as well. When I read the chapter title, that is the last thing that crossed my mind. However, I had an indication that somewhere Anne was going to get the money she needed to finish her college, so I just didn't expect it to come through the gift of, Miss Josephine Barry's passing. So anyway, thank you for joining me for this Easter Sunday afternoon. Hope you are having a wonderful and beautiful holiday. And until our next storybook adventure, be joyful and be the joy in everything you do. Nugs and joy, my friends. Mwah. Bye.